They say one night can't change a life. They're wrong. I walked into that glass tower in a borrowed uniform and walked out having cost a man $3 billion. I didn't shout. I didn't fight. I just stood there, a black waitress, and told the truth. My name is Imani Lewis, and I wasn't supposed to be at that dinner. I was just supposed to pour wine, smile, disappear. The kind of invisibility you learn when you're black and people want service, not presence. The event was at the Voss penthouse, 60 floors above Manhattan, a place where the air itself felt expensive. Chandeliers dripped like liquid glass. The marble floors gleamed so perfectly you could mistake your reflection for someone richer. It was the closing dinner for Ethan Voss, America's new tech messiah, the man about to merge his company for $3 billion. I remember the elevator ride up, my hands shaking, my reflection staring back at me through mirrored steel. "It's just one night," I whispered. "Smile, keep quiet, go home." I didn't know that night would echo across headlines before sunrise. At 28, I had worked every kind of shift: diners, airports, gala events. But this was different. The guests weren't customers. They were institutions. Senators, venture capital legends, one famous athlete pretending to understand stocks. I could feel power humming through the room like hidden electricity. They said Ethan Voss built his empire from nothing, that he was self-made. What they never mentioned was the trail of broken people behind him. I'd read about him while studying journalism. Yes, journalism. Waiting tables was how I paid for graduate school. I wanted to write stories about truth and power. That night, I lived one. The coordinator handed me my section. Table 1, the head table. "Just smile, no talking," she said. "These people don't like distractions." Distractions. I knew what she meant. Table 1 looked like a magazine cover. Ethan Voss at the center in a graphite suit that probably cost more than my student loans. To his left, his fiancée, model thin, diamond bright. To his right, Raymond Hughes, the potential investor, gray-haired, calm, the kind of quiet money people bowed toward. I didn't know him personally, not yet. I started the night invisible, refilling glasses, clearing plates, timing smiles. The conversations floated like smoke. Market projections, offshore holdings, the kind of numbers that don't sound real to people who count rent in quarters. Then came the spill. Small. Silent. Catastrophic. I was reaching to pour Merlot into Mr. Voss's glass when the base of the bottle caught the lip, and a streak of red curved onto his sleeve. Not much. Just enough to be seen. I gasped softly. "I'm so sorry, sir." He didn't let me finish. He turned, slow, deliberate, his voice cutting through the music. "Don't touch me. You people never learn boundaries, do you? You people." The words hit harder than the spill, sharper than the crystal breaking somewhere in the back of my mind. The table froze. Even the jazz trio stopped mid-note. My body went cold first, then hot. I remember thinking, "Keep breathing." He looked me up and down, eyes narrowing. "Can't hire decent staff anymore," he said, louder this time, inviting the laughter he didn't get. No one laughed. Just the soft clinking of silverware being set down. I dabbed the cloth gently against the tablecloth, not his sleeve, and whispered, "Excuse me." He waved a hand dismissively. "Just clean it and go." I wanted to vanish. But something inside me refused. Not anger. Clarity. That quiet place where humiliation hardens into truth. After moments like that, silence stretches differently. It isn't peace. It's pressure. The kind that measures who you are when no one defends you. I could feel the other guests pretending to breathe, pretending not to notice. Except one. Raymond Hughes. He watched. Not pity. Observation. The kind of attention that unnerves bullies. I finished my round, stepped into the service corridor, leaned against the wall, and finally exhaled. My coworker Tosha whispered, "Girl, I saw that. You okay?" "Yeah," I lied. I've been through worse. But inside, something shifted. All my years learning to be invisible suddenly felt like betrayal. 20 minutes later, a security guard approached. "You," he said. "Mr. Hughes wants to see you." My stomach dropped. I thought I was getting fired, again. They led me to a quiet terrace overlooking the city. The night air smelled of champagne and rain. Raymond Hughes stood there alone, the skyline reflected in his glasses. "Imani Lewis," he said. My name, spoken like a secret. "Yes, sir," I answered cautiously. He smiled faintly. "Your mother and I went to Howard together. She told me you were working here part-time." I blinked. "You know my mother?" "Know her. I funded her community initiative last year." He turned, gaze softening. "She wanted you to see what power looks like up close." My breath caught. "So this." "She asked me to include you on the staff list," he said. "She wanted to show you something important." I didn't speak. My mother always said lessons come disguised as struggle. I just never expected the disguise to wear $1,000 tie. "Mr. Voss made a mistake tonight," Hughes continued. "Not because he insulted you, though that matters, but because he revealed himself in a room full of people who pretend to be moral. And tomorrow, they'll pretend they never heard him." He paused. "Unless someone reminds them." He handed me a small silver drive. "Security cameras. Audio and video. The board will meet tomorrow morning to finalize the merger. I think they should see the kind of man they're merging with." I stared at the drive. "Why me?" "Because truth means more when it comes from the person he tried to erase." I didn't sleep that night. The city never does, and neither did my mind. What if they said I provoked him? What if I ruined everything for my mother? For myself? But another question kept me awake longer. What if I stayed silent, again? By morning, the decision was made. The next day felt like walking into a movie I wasn't supposed to be in. They held the merger meeting in the same building, same floor, same faces, but the air had changed. Cameras flashed outside the conference hall. The press already smelled money. I walked in carrying a tray of coffee, invisible again, or so they thought. Ethan Voss was already performing, laughing loud enough to dominate the room. "Gentlemen," he boomed, "today we make history." Raymond Hughes sat silently at the far end, tapping a pen against the table. When he noticed me, he gave a subtle nod. "Now." I set the tray down, stepped back, and pressed play on the remote he'd slipped me. The projector screen behind them flickered alive. At first, confusion. Then recognition. My own voice. "I'm so sorry, sir." Then Ethan's, clear as glass. "Don't touch me, you people never learn boundaries, do you?" The room froze exactly like it had the night before. Only this time, there was no jazz to hide behind. Just truth, amplified through surround sound. Ethan shot to his feet. "Turn that off," he shouted. No one moved. The investors stared. Phones appeared like courtroom evidence. Raymond spoke calmly. "Gentlemen, I believe that's the man asking for your trust with $3 billion of our money." Silence. Then whispers. Then chaos. Within minutes, the news reached the lobby. By noon, it hit social media. By 2, networks were calling it the $3 billion remark. Investors withdrew. PR teams resigned. Stock crashed 12% before closing bell. And me. I went home. No victory dance, no speech. Just quiet. But when I opened my phone, messages flooded in. "Is that you in the video? We stand with you. He deserved it." I didn't reply. I just sat by the window and let the city hum beneath me, realizing power didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered back. This section covers the immediate fallout, the media storm, Ethan Voss's unraveling, and Imani's quiet strength as the truth spreads. When a secret becomes public, it doesn't walk, it runs. By the time I reached my apartment that evening, The city was already whispering my name. I never posted the clip. Someone else had. Maybe a board member. Maybe a journalist in the room. Doesn't matter. Truth has its own Wi-Fi. Within an hour, the video had 3 million views. Hashtags multiplied like wildfire. Hashtag we hear Imani. Hashtag the $3 billion remark. Hashtag respect I sent optional. By dawn, networks were looping my face next to his. And I wasn't ready for any of it. My phone buzzed until it overheated. Friends, strangers, reporters. My mother called first. You did what I raised you to do, she said softly. Tell the truth and stand tall while you do it. Her voice steadied me. I hadn't realized how much I'd been shaking. Outside, Manhattan pulsed. Taxi horns, sirens, screens flashing headlines in real time. Ethan Voss caught on tape. Investors pull out of $3 billion merger. That was the moment I understood how fragile power really is. One sentence, one heartbeat, one truth, and empires crack. He called me. Not personally. His assistant did. A man with a voice like polished marble. Mr. Voss would like to apologize privately, he said. I laughed quietly. Privately is how this started. Then I hung up. They called again. And again. Each time with softer words. More panic hidden under politeness. I didn't answer. Some apologies are only investments in damage control. Later that afternoon, Raymond Hughes reached out. He didn't speak like a billionaire. He spoke like an uncle checking in. You okay, kid? Trying to be good. Because the sharks smell blood. Stay off interviews for now. Let the truth work by itself. He was right. For the first time, silence served me, not them. By day 2, every outlet had a headline. From Waitress to whistleblower. Who is Imani Lewis? Tech Titan's racist outburst costs billions. Voss Dynamics stock plummets 22%. My inbox filled with interview requests, documentary proposals, brand deals, irony wrapped in capitalism. One network even asked if I'd reenact the spill for camera. I said no. The truth didn't need special effects. Meanwhile, Voss's empire bled. 3 board members resigned. 2 partner firms froze contracts. Shareholders filed for an emergency session. The same men who once toasted him were now erasing his number from their phones. I watched from my couch, a mug of tea shaking in my hands, thinking about how quiet that ballroom had been right after he spoke. That silence had been the sound of the world turning. On the 3rd day, footage leaked of Voss's internal video call with staff. He blamed cancel culture, called himself the real victim. It aired everywhere. He looked smaller each time I saw the replay. Confidence curdled into desperation. Reporters camped outside his building. Former employees came forward with their own stories. Discrimination, humiliation, fear. Each testimony was another brick pulled from the tower he'd built. That night, I journaled, something I'd stopped doing since college. I wrote, "Truth isn't loud. It's steady. It waits for the right mic." 2 days later, a black car idled outside my building. A courier delivered an envelope, white, thick, embossed with the Voss Dynamics logo. Inside, a non-disclosure agreement and a check with too many zeros. I laughed so hard I cried. They still didn't understand. It was never about money. It was about meaning. And dignity costs more than any check can cover. I tore it in half, then quarters, then dust. Freedom is lighter than fear. By the end of the week, the story had moved from gossip to case study. News anchors debated racial sensitivity in corporate America. PR firms hosted webinars about crisis accountability. Suddenly everyone spoke the language I'd been punished for using. But what struck me most was the students. Emails poured in from college kids, waitresses, hotel staff. I saw myself in you. I didn't know silence could break things too. Thank you for not yelling, for just standing there. Their words built something in me. Something solid. Maybe this was what my mother meant by legacy. Not wealth, but wakefulness. While the world watched, Ethan Voss scrambled. He hired consultants, lawyers, even a diversity officer overnight. They drafted statements dripping with remorse and buzzwords. But sincerity can't be outsourced. Every press conference ended the same way. Cameras flashing, reporters shouting, Ethan sweating. He kept saying, "I misspoke." But racism isn't a slip. It's a script you've rehearsed so long you forget it's cruel. By week's end, the merger board dissolved. His estimated net worth fell by $3 billion in market value. That number didn't make me gloat. It made me think. All that intelligence, all that access, and undone by arrogance in 3 syllables. You people. 10 days later, Raymond Hughes called again. "We're holding a press briefing tomorrow," he said. "It's time the world hears from the only person who never needed a microphone." I hesitated. "I'm not built for cameras." "You're built for truth," he replied. Same thing. He was right again. It was the same hotel, different floor, same glass walls. Reporters lined the aisles like predators smelling redemption. Flashbulbs burst when I walked in. I wore a simple black blazer. No makeup crew, no PR team. Just me and the truth that refused to stay quiet. Raymond introduced me. "This is Imani Lewis. Some of you know her as the waitress from the video. I know her as the reason integrity still matters." Cameras clicked. I stepped to the podium. For a heartbeat, every noise disappeared. The room, the lights, the stairs, all melted into that same silence from the ballroom. Only this time, I owned it. "I wasn't supposed to be seen," I began. "I was there to serve, not to speak. But when someone decides you're invisible, the most radical thing you can do is exist loudly." I told them everything. How it felt, what I saw, why silence hurts more than insults. I didn't cry. Didn't shout. Just spoke. And when I finished, the room stood. Not for me, but for what they'd remembered, basic decency. That press conference changed the temperature of the story. It wasn't gossip anymore. It was a mirror. Editorials poured in. One headline read, "The Waitress Who Redefined Power." Raymond Hughes's firm announced a new initiative, the Lewis Fellowship, funding scholarships for underrepresented students in media and ethics. He didn't tell me beforehand. He just did it. "You turned humiliation into education," he said later. "Now others will too." Voss tried one last move, an interview to rebuild his image. The journalist asked, "If you could speak to Imani Lewis, what would you say?" He smiled thinly. "I'd tell her I'm sorry for the misunderstanding." The internet exploded. Misunderstanding. As if prejudice were poor grammar. That clip finished what was left of his career. Investors fled completely. Regulators opened investigations into his companies. By month's end, he resigned to focus on personal growth. $3 billion gone. A lesson unpaid but learned the hard way. People keep asking how it feels to have brought down a billionaire. But I didn't bring him down. He jumped. I just refused to cushion the fall with my silence. Sometimes I replay that night in my mind. The spill, the sting, the stillness. I realize now the real moment wasn't when he spoke. It was when I didn't. When I chose calm over collapse. That's where dignity lives. In the pause after pain. 4 weeks after the press conference, the noise around me refused to fade. News vans parked outside my apartment. Neighbors left notes on my door, some grateful, some angry, all curious. People wanted to turn me into something. A symbol, a soundbite, a revolution in heels. But I didn't feel like any of that. I just felt tired. I went back to work 2 weeks later. Different restaurant, smaller pay, fewer headlines. I needed normal. I needed to hear plates clink and people laugh without wondering which words might cost someone their empire. Every night, when the last table cleared, I'd wipe down the counter and think about how strange it was. A single moment could tear open an entire system, and yet rent still came due. One morning, an envelope arrived. No logo this time, just my name written in careful ink. Inside was a short note from Raymond Hughes. Imani, we're creating something new. It's called the Integrity Foundation. We'd like you to join the board as communications director. Not because of what happened to you, but because of what you did with it. RH. I stared at the paper until the words blurred. Me on a board. The same girl who once balanced 3 jobs to buy textbooks? But maybe that was the point. Representation isn't an invitation. It's overdue rent finally paid. The foundation's office sat on the 23rd floor of a downtown building, its walls lined with black and white portraits of people who'd spoken truth when it was dangerous. Rosa, Malcolm, Fannie Lou, and modern names I'd only read in hashtags. When I walked in on my first day, the receptionist smiled nervously. Ms. Lewis, welcome. The title sounded heavy, like a coat too fine for my shoulders. But as I settled into my desk, a small space with a view of the Hudson, I realized something. The girl who once hid behind trays now had a table of her own. My first project was a campaign called Quiet Strength. It spotlighted everyday workers who challenged discrimination in subtle, brave ways. Nurses, drivers, janitors, teachers. We didn't stage their stories. We listened. We let them narrate themselves. Because that's what I had wanted the night of the spill. Not rescue, just recognition. 3 months later, I ran into Ethan Voss. Not planned, not dramatic. Just coincidence, or maybe karma keeping its appointments. It was at a conference on ethics in tech. He was there to begin his path of reform. The phrase itself felt rehearsed. He spotted me across the lobby. For a second, neither of us moved. He approached slowly. No entourage, no cameras. Imani, he said, voice quieter than I remembered. I owe you. I stopped him with a small nod. You don't owe me. You owe yourself honesty. That's a debt only you can pay. He swallowed hard. You destroyed me. No, I said. You recorded yourself. He looked away. For the first time, I saw a man stripped of power, standing in the ruins he'd built. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure. 6 months after the video, the Integrity Foundation held its first public gala. We raised funds for whistleblower protections, scholarships, and racial equity training in corporations nationwide. I was asked to give the closing speech. I walked onto the same kind of stage that had once made me invisible. Lights bright, faces blurred. I took a breath. A year ago, I was pouring wine for people who never saw me. I spilled a drink, and a man spilled his character. Both stains washed out, mine from fabric, his from reputation. Laughter rippled gently through the crowd, then quiet. People keep saying I cost him $3 billion. But truth doesn't cost, it reveals. Money didn't vanish. Masks did. What we lose in lies, we gain in lessons. I saw heads nodding. Some eyes shining. I don't hate Ethan Voss. I thank him. He showed me that silence can bankrupt the soul faster than any stock crash. When I stepped away, the applause was soft at first, then thunderous. But the sound that stayed with me was one person whispering, "She's right." That night, I sat on my mother's porch in Atlanta, cicadas humming like an old hymn. She handed me sweet tea and smiled. "You look lighter," she said. "I finally put something down," I answered. We watched the news play a short segment about the foundation. My name scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Mama laughed. "You used to hide from cameras." "Still do," I said. "I just stopped hiding from myself." Weeks later, another headline appeared. Former CEO Ethan Voss declares bankruptcy. His remaining partners had cut him loose. He sold the penthouse, the same one where he'd tried to make me small. Someone else would drink wine under that chandelier now. A reporter asked if I felt justice was served. I said, "Justice isn't about revenge. It's about reflection. Because what destroyed him wasn't me. It was the mirror I held up. Within a year, the Integrity Foundation grew from one floor in Manhattan to chapters in 7 states. We trained businesses on ethical leadership, sponsored journalism students, and created safe channels for reporting discrimination. Sometimes, when I walked through the office late at night, I'd stop at the mural on the main wall. It showed a woman holding a tray that transformed into a microphone. Beneath it, a line read, "The ones they ignore often carry the loudest truth." Every time I passed it, I smiled. Because that woman wasn't just me. It was everyone who'd ever swallowed anger to keep a job, everyone who'd ever cleaned up someone else's mess and still been blamed for the spill. A year later, I received an email from a major streaming network. Subject line, documentary proposal, the waitress who cost a billionaire $3 billion. They wanted to dramatize it, cast actors, build tension. I hesitated. Then I remembered something my journalism professor once said, if you don't tell your own story, someone else will, and they'll sell it wrong. So I agreed, on one condition. I'd narrate it myself. That's the story you're hearing now. My story. Told not for revenge, but remembrance. Because every time someone says, it's just words, I want them to remember what words can break, and what truth can build. A year can turn noise into memory. The hashtags slowed. The headlines moved on. The world, like it always does, chased the next outrage. But for me, the echo never really stopped. It lived quietly. In classrooms, in offices, in every whispered. Did you see what that waitress did? Some nights I'd walk past the restaurant where it all began. They'd renovated, new chairs, new staff, same marble floor. If you didn't know the story, you'd think nothing ever happened there. But I did. And every reflection in that polished floor reminded me that silence can be as sharp as any blade. When the documentary finally premiered, I sat in the back of the theater, hoodie pulled up, trying to blend in. On screen, actors replayed my life in soft lighting and slow motion. Then my real voice came in, the narration we recorded months before. Hearing it through speakers made my chest tighten. I'd said, "Power doesn't corrupt, it reveals. It shows who we already are when we think no one's watching." The audience went quiet. Someone sniffled. When the credits rolled, people stood. Not for me, but for the idea that truth can survive without permission. Afterward, a teenage girl found me in the hallway. Her hair was braided like mine had been that night. She said, "I'm studying hospitality. My dad says it's just serving. But you made me see it's also seeing." "Thank you." I smiled. "You're welcome," I told her. "Just remember, dignity isn't a tip they give you. It's a truth you keep." A month later, I received a letter from a return address I didn't recognize. Inside, a handwritten note. "Imani, I sold everything. I'm teaching now. Guest lectures on accountability. You were right. Honesty was a debt I had to pay. Ethan Voss." I folded it carefully, slid it into my journal, and closed the cover. Not forgiveness. Not revenge. Just full stop. Because closure isn't when they say sorry. It's when you stop needing them to. 2 years after that night, the Integrity Foundation moved into its own building. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew activists, executives, even politicians trying to look enlightened. When it was my turn to speak, I looked at the cameras and thought of the girl I had been, balancing plates, biting her tongue. "I used to think the world belonged to the people at the head of the table," I said. "But it also belongs to the ones clearing it. Because when the plates are gone and the guests forget your name, it's our hands that keep the room from collapsing." Applause rose, warm and real. Behind me, the mural gleamed in the afternoon light, the woman with a tray turning into a microphone. Sometimes people ask if I'd change anything. Maybe I'd pour slower. Maybe I'd wear darker colors. But the truth? I wouldn't. Because that night gave me more than it took. It showed me that power isn't permanent, and prejudice can't survive exposure. And it taught me that the smallest act of composure can rewrite a billion-dollar narrative. Ethan Voss lost $3 billion. But the world gained a lesson worth far more. Respect isn't optional currency, it's human capital. I still work sometimes. Different events, different faces. Old habits die slowly. When I hand someone a glass of wine, I look them in the eye, steady, unflinching. And if they see me, truly see me, I nod. Because visibility is victory. There's a phrase I tell every intern who joins the foundation. Don't chase revenge. Chase relevance. Let your truth outlive their titles. I didn't destroy a billionaire. I illuminated him. And the light did the rest. If this story moved you, even a little, don't let it fade with the scroll. Click like to remind the algorithm that decency still matters. Share it with someone who's been overlooked. And if you believe stories like mine deserve a voice, subscribe and help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Because every click is a small rebellion against silence. And silence, I've learned, is the only empire that truly deserves to fall. You are watching Black Diaries. Thank you. Please visit our channel again for more such stories.